All right, let's get this going. You ready to talk posture?
Yeah, I did not prepare anything.
That's all
So
good. That's
did
fine.
you?
No.
All right, so we're just gonna ad lib. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start you off, and then I'm gonna interrupt you because now I know a lot more about posture. I've been teaching all my clients. I'm all about posture because everybody's posture is terrible.
That is correct.
Do we agree on that? Can we start? Can we begin the podcast by agreeing on that? And
Absolutely.
then
You
and
want
then
to
we'll do the
intro,
intro
or
music. What's
you're
that?
gonna, you're going to add the intro later, or are you going to do the intro now?
I'm gonna do the intro, but I always have like a little blurb at the beginning that I usually lift from somewhere in our banter. So that could be like, everybody's posture is, I don't want to say terrible because that's rude, but everybody's posture needs work, man. All these people who come into the gym that I'm coaching and training, their posture is just not good. And I'm not saying my posture is good, but I
Well,
work on it.
yeah, the trainers don't have good posture either.
They have horrible posture. I look at them and I'm like, a couple of them are like, I'm blessed with having coworkers who actually know what they're doing and talking about. And I look at them and I'm like, okay, yeah, some of them actually do. You just can tell they work on their posture. Or they're projecting that because they want to sign up clients maybe. Um,
Right.
but yeah, I think that, it's usually kyphotic back. It's often like, the what I used to have that I'm really trying to work on, which is the anterior pelvic tilt and right anterior or posterior.
Posterior and leaning backwards.
Posterior is leaning backwards. Yeah, I always get the two confused, but yeah, posterior pelvic tilt.
I have a picture of you in one of my workshops, that picture of you and your father, and you are leaning so far back. It's so crazy.
Yeah,
I had
no, I know the one you're talking about.
Yeah, I had a client the other day and we were just laughing, and she's such a sweetheart. And it was her first session, and she's like, "Oh my God, I lean backwards. This is crazy." And I said, "So what did your mother tell you every day growing up?" And she was like, "Lift my chest and take my shoulders back." And that's it. That is the universal instruction for posture that everybody gets, and it is the worst instruction ever in the annals of really bad instructions. Take your shoulders back, which is a universal in yoga, is really the worst instruction everyone can hear, and it's what we hear our whole life.
It's true. All right, let's cue the music. Welcome to the CoreWalking podcast, a step in the right direction. I'm Alex Mabalon.
And I'm Jonathan Fitzgordon.
And it's been a little bit of a hiatus that we've been on. That will all come to light of why that has happened during the course of this podcast. We've both been quite busy, but we are excited to be back. And today we're going to discuss posture, which is dear to both of our hearts. And we were just chatting about it before we started the podcast, and just talking about, you heard in the pre-intro about how taking your shoulders back is the worst instruction that could possibly exist. So what is the proper instruction, I guess, is the question at hand. And I'm going to start off by saying that for me, instead of taking your shoulders back, it's like bring your shoulder blades into your back pocket. And takes a little more work and a little bit more thinking about, because I think that people don't really can't really locate their shoulder blades. Because when I tell people to put a yoga block underneath their shoulder blades to open up their chest and lying down, like that's a kind of a classic opening posture in yoga. They usually put it right on their shoulder blades. I'm like, so you need to move it down so the top edge is at the tip of your shoulder blades, and people don't really know where their shoulder blades are. So when you say like bring your shoulder blades down towards your back pocket, and that's not the cue I always use, but that's one of the ones I do use, is to engage the lats, right? And I often do think of you, now that I'm training in a gym and I've done another yoga teacher training, and we've discussed lats, my coworkers in the gym discuss lats. In teacher training, we discuss lats. And lats are, people don't engage their lats. And if they develop them, sometimes they're overdeveloped, then you get this kind of, and I'm rolling my shoulders forward here, this kind of kyphotic, hyperkyphotic back. And I had a client who I was having him do these face pulls. So it's where you pull, you basically pull the weight, you on the cable machine, pull the weight towards your face, right? And kind of spread your shoulders and squeeze your shoulder blades. And every time he was like, this is not enough weight. But what he was doing is stopping his shoulder, like not squeezing his shoulder blades and bringing his head forward towards the middle of the rope, right? And I was like, it's not enough weight because you ain't doing it right, you know? And you need to like, and then I said, try doing it this way. And he was wearing a baseball cap backwards. And I just held the baseball cap to keep his head from moving forward. And he was like, yeah, this is plenty of weight in the end. And I think it's really about like finding the balance in your middle back. I think that's part of posture. And then we can get into like the lower part of it. And obviously it all starts with the feet. But what's your take on what I just said?
Well,
let's go back and forth. Let's joust, man.
I can give you like 3 comments on what you just said. First, forget the shoulder blades in the back pocket just because it's complicated for people, and even that takes the shoulders back. So my instruction would be slump, right? Slumping is better posture than any idea of taking the shoulders back and where the shoulder blade should go. And
what does that mean, slump?
Relax. Relax into your front body. Let the head of your arm bones roll forward, right? The arms have to hang. We can go over like my main cues for posture. One of them is the arms have to hang, right?
Yeah.
The arms have to hang, and they can't hang if you're taking them back, and they can't hang if you're leaning backwards. So instead of anything to do with the back body, I would just say, let the head of the arm bones roll forward and slump. And because what people think is slumping is almost always going to be better. They're not really slumping, and it's better posture than what they think good posture is. So a lot of it is perception. I say it to all my clients in the beginning, like, I am teaching you perception. When you think you're standing up straight, you're leaning backwards. So that if I stand you up straight, you think you're leaning forward. And that's what has to change. Right? You have to change your image of your body in space. But so that's just one thing. But then the lats are really fascinating. Latissimus dorsi. Because I think most people have really weak lats because they lean backwards and have terrible posture. Right? So the lats are one of the, so this is fun. This is going to be our first video podcast in addition to going out on audio. We're going to put this up on YouTube, so maybe we can show a couple of exercises, even at least one sitting, because I can do a really simple lat exercise that I think is a really simple and great way to see if your lats are working or not. Maybe we'll get to that. But the thing about the lats, which are an incredible muscle, they're the only muscle that attaches the arm to the spine, right? Latissimus dorsi, only muscle attaches the arm to the spine, and it doesn't technically attach at the pelvis, but it attaches to the pelvis through the thoracolumbar fascia. So what does that mean? If you are standing up and leaning backwards, right? When you think you're straight, I think everyone leans backwards. I think the standard poor posture is thighs forward, upper body backwards, pelvis in a posterior tilt. Sometimes not, right? But usually, if you're leaning backwards, which compresses your lower back, and then by definition compresses your lower back muscles, how are you going to have tone in your lats? You know, they're at a loss from the very beginning just because of your bad posture. So to me, people can do all the exercises they want on the machines, but if they're not doing them like with good posture, like you said about the guy's head, they're not really using their musculature correctly, because the skeleton has to be aligned correctly. One of the things I talk about teaching yoga, congratulations on finishing your yoga teacher training, right?
Thanks.
I
I'm proud of
say
myself.
in everybody out there, hire Alex if you're in New York. I say that for me, teaching yoga is I'm teaching diagnostically. So I want to see if teaching 20 people and I want to see what those people have by way of strength, I just put them all into plank. And the people, if you have strength when you're in plank, your ears are going to be up in line with your shoulders and your hips and your knees. And if you don't, your head is going to be falling forward like that guy on the machine. And then
Right.
the second thing I'll look at is lower from plank to the floor. And to be able to be strong, whatever that means, quote unquote strong, you have to be able to lower from plank to the floor, keeping your head and your waist from collapsing, right? And keep your arm bones back, et cetera, et cetera. But just like with that guy, most people, they go to lower to the floor and the head leads the way. And therefore, I can look at that person and go, they're just not, well, they're not ready for the exercise I just put them through, but they also don't have the core to support their body in the way that it needs support, right?
Right.
So, but you said it, like it starts at the feet, not in the back. And when we're talking about good posture, it's a pretty classic paradigm, right? It's stacking the bones or having a plumb line go from the ears through the shoulders, through the hips, to the knees, to the ankles. It's just aligning your bones in a straight line and what it takes to do that habitually. I'm the first person to say, I don't have good posture all the time. I think when I show you my good posture, it is really good. I am a good advertisement for what I sell, but that doesn't mean I'm always that way. My newest toy is I just got a pizza oven. I'm very excited. And one of these outdoor propane pizza ovens. And when we leave, I'm still trying to master the pizza. And when I'm cooking, which I do every day, it's just a matter of time before I feel myself leaning forward in my hips. Sometimes I catch my thighs being up against the counter, right? So it's posture is so dynamic, and there's a good posture we're searching for, which is that plumb line. But it's an illusion to think it's something you can have all the time. But if you can learn it, the best thing about learning to have good posture is it's going to help you age well, and that's the thing we need the most.
Yeah, I think that's true, but I do think like people, I had a client this morning and I'm like, you feel your knees hyperextending? And she's like, I do. And I'm really trying to be conscious of that. She is hypermobile and her knees hyperextend. So I'm like, you need to keep like a slight bend in your knees. And she is conscious of that, right? I've told her before. She worked with a trainer before me who moved on. So I started training her. This trainer is also big into posture and into alignment. And she told her to keep a slight bend in her knees. But again, like it's work, right? It's work to find good posture because you got to live with, in her case, her hypermobility, right? That she hyperextends her knees. And believe me, like her shoulders are the same thing. Like she's just hypermobile everywhere, just a little like you. And also with all the things that you've been taught that, from your parents, from your ballet teacher, from your gymnastics teacher, from your track coach, from your basketball coach, whatever it is, you know what I mean? And your personal trainers before me, who may not have been the best personal trainers. In this case, she did have a good personal trainer, or your yoga teachers, like you mentioned. So it's just, there's an amalgam of things that have brought you to the posture that you have now, right? And if you're 25, it's easier to probably correct the course than if you're 55 or 45. But I think the idea that like you have to work to stand, like that standing is already tiring, but that you have to put a little more work into it in order to stand correctly is a little bit intimidating to people. So
if you stand correctly, you work less, right? But
that's the idea ultimately, right?
Totally. But
you don't think that initially you do have to work more because you're engaging muscles that may be dormant, let's say, or are overly tight. I mean, that's the way that I feel. Like I'll see people and they're like, man, I'm engaging muscles, like my quads are engaged in this, and I'm just standing the way that you're making me stand. I'm like, yeah, because usually you don't use your quads.
So that's interesting because there's 9 things to unpack in that as well.
Oh yeah.
That's a
That
pretty
was the idea of like saying that statement, was that you would just go off. I just like, I'm going to walk away and make
there you
myself
go,
a
right?
sandwich.
The first thing I teach in posture, usually the first thing I try to get people to do is take their thighs back, right?
Yeah,
Take the thighs
I can
back.
attest to that.
There's a couple of things that happen when they do that. One, if they are hypermobile and they tend to hyperextend their knees, they're going to take the thighs back from the calves. The calves are going to move first. So I'll watch them do that, and I'll say, okay, that's great, but you actually didn't move your thighs back first. You moved your calves back, right? So back to perception. I don't love the idea, and trust me, I tell people to slightly bend your knees, but I don't love the idea of put a slight bend in your knees, because a slight bend in your knees is actually straightening your lower leg. Like, we want to establish a right angle between the foot and the shin. And when people
Yeah.
stop hyperextending, they think that right angle is bent, even though it's straight. And I'm the proof of that. I used to think that when my leg was straight, that my knees were bent, right? One thing that's really interesting that you said is about the quads, because I don't think when people say, I don't think they're using their quads in the way that people think or you think. In other words, if you don't hyperextend your knees and you take your thighs back successfully, which is going to align the leg bones under the pelvis and put the femur heads into their sockets well, it's not that your quads turn on, it's that your quads are freaking out because they're engaged differently than they're used to. So I think it's actually the opposite of being used, right? And that I tell people, if this goes well and you take your legs back successfully and stop hyperextending, that sensation you feel in the quads is going to go away really quickly, because they're going to actually get to stop working. And all of this stuff is actually really, I always say it's really simple to show somebody how to stand up straight, and then to learn the how and the why of it is hard. And then to do it is maddening, because you got to work on it for a good long time over and over again. And like I said, 25 years later, I still have bad posture, probably 30% of the time. I don't know what the percentage is, but we're dynamic creatures. But there's a couple of ways of looking at it and this is the way I really do start with people, is below the pelvis to start, right? We want to stack the bones. We want to, it's the skeleton and posture. It's all about weight transfer, right? How do you when we stand well, very few muscles need to be on. Right? When we stand well, the quads don't really need to be on at all. Only one of them needs to have a tiny bit of engagement, rectus femoris, and the calves don't need to be on. Your pelvic floor is always on, so you don't pee like a horse or a cow walking down the street, right? You have to control your bowels and your urine. The psoas is always on. It's a postural muscle. Piriformis is always on. When we're standing, gluteus maximus to me needs to barely be on. And that's a huge problem in the world of posture, because a lot of people are saying, use your butt, your gluteus maximus, to help you stand, right? But when we stand poorly in the legs, if you hyperextend your knees, what does that mean? It means you are using the ligaments at the back of your knee to hold you up. If you're sinking your thighs forward, what does that mean? It means, one, you're overstretching the iliofemoral ligament, which is designed to tie the leg into the pelvis super tight, but you're stretching it out. And you're sinking into the tendon of the rectus femoris, which is the main hip flexor. Psoas and rectus femoris, two main hip flexors. When you're working out with somebody and you get them to do a core exercise and they feel that weird steel band engaged in their upper thigh, like when you do feet off the floor, that's the rectus femoris. right? So if your thighs sink forward, or you're being held up by the rectus femoris, which is one of the quads, or you're hyper, because not everyone hyperextends their knees when standing. So if you're hyperextending, you're being held up by the back of the knee. So what does that mean? When you stop that, all of a sudden, your femur bone aligns on top of your tibia, and then why does the calf need to work? So your calf, let's say you're 50, most of my clients are older, you're 50 or 60, and you've been using your calves and your ligaments to hold you up, and you stop, those muscles they're gonna freak out in a weird way, but in a, not in a active way, in an inactive way. And when you stop putting all that weight into the quads and the rectus femoris in particular, all of a sudden the quad is freaking out, because not because it's working, but it's because it's going, wait a second, I don't have to do all this work 24/7. I can actually get a break. And that's the feeling I think people have when they do think, oh my God, my quads are working so much. I think it's that the quads are just freaking out, going, I don't have to do all that work to hold you up. And that's why that's one of the things I really think can go away pretty quickly when you fix, quote unquote, somebody's posture. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I use the quads as an example. And I do think that ultimately, yes, you should feel relaxed when you're standing correctly. It's just that it takes work to get there. And I think that's the people. I mean, I have everybody that comes to see me, I have them take their shoes off and I look at their feet, right? Usually they're in socks because it's a gym, so it's gross. I don't want to, but everybody's got some kind of foot dysfunction like that. A lot of them, it's their arches collapse in, and I just have to work on that so that their legs can be straight, because otherwise their legs aren't straight, man.
Totally. So wait, does anyone at the gym train in bare feet?
No, the people who train with me, I have them take their shoes off usually. Most of
that's
them.
fine. That's, socks are fine, but like
socks they're not ideal, but they're better than shoes.
That's right. But you know how I love Bosu? Bosu is a classic gym toy.
Yeah.
I would never do that with shoes on. And then all the videos you see on YouTube, everyone's into the gym, so they're all wearing shoes, which
they've got their shoes, and they've got their shoes that angle down, right? The ones with like a drop in the foot.
Which I like, but all of this stuff, like, it doesn't make any sense to me to wear sneakers to work out. But that's a whole nother story. But no, is perfect.
Yeah. No, in fairness to like some of the gym goers, the members of the gym, they do wear either zero shoes, or some of them have the Vivos, the zero drop flat, barefoot shoes. Some people wear the Ultras, which are at least zero drop, but have padding underneath. But the ones you see the most are the Hokas. And the reason people like Hokas is because it has a wide toe box, so it lets their toes play out, but it still has a drop, so it's still shortening your Achilles tendon. And I have like a couple of clients who have Hokas, and I don't want to tell them to throw them out because they're brand new and they love their Hokas, but I kind of want to tell them to throw them out.
Well, look, here's the thing about Hoka shoes. I know people who had to stop running and were able to start running again because they wear Hokas.
Yeah.
And after a decade of not being able to run, they're able to run. I can't tell that person to throw them out, but what I can.
But that's because they have padding like this tall.
Maximal shoes. I'm into anything. Whatever works, I'm into, right? But I wear minimal shoes. But in the winter, I wear boots, But so everything is practical. What I tell people about the Hokas, because they do work, the maximal thing is really great. It puts less strain on your joints in certain ways, but it doesn't teach you how to run. And if everything for me, even though, we both bike and we both do a lot of yoga and I hike a lot, everything for me is about movement and working out, but it's not about how I feel at 60, though I feel really good at 60. It's, am I going to be able to do this stuff when I am 80? Right?
Yeah.
And I don't think the maximal shoes and toys and things like that are teaching us how to do this stuff for another 20 or 30 years. So the Hoka allows you to not think about your running technique. It allows you to go back to that same running technique that hurt you 3 years ago, 5 years ago. You don't change your technique, you change your shoe. That doesn't add up well for me down the line. But honestly, I talk to people and they go, "Oh my God, I'm able to run again." I
I
don't
believe
want to.
that because
Yeah.
it's got so much padding, and also because of the wide toe box, which I will give Hokas that they have a wide toe box, is my understanding. I've never tried them, but that your feet can actually splay out, so you have a bigger base for your foot, even though the base is on this crazy, not even trampoline. It's just like crazy shock absorber,
But my Merrells, I wear Merrell minimal shoes because that's what works for my feet. They have a very wide toe box. My favorite shoes, we're not affiliates for anyone, but my favorite shoes are Echoes. Echoes, high heel, wide toe box. Like, you don't need to get Hokas to get the wide toe box, but no one should wear shoes that don't have a wide toe box. But
That's facts.
today's podcast is not about feet and shoes. We have those in our archive.
We do. That's
but
true.
to start the idea of starting changing people's posture from the feet is great, but to let the calves go and let the thighs go, the way I change people's posture to start is by telling them to relax their butt. That's my first instruction. Relax your butt. When I'm teaching yoga, which I still do online, in the membership program, when I very often, at least, once or twice a month, start class by going through my posture cues. And the first cue is relax your butt, right? So I say, take your thighs back, but what I'll say stand in, I do everything. It's old you and new you. So stand in old you, which is thighs forward, maybe knees hyperextended, upper body leaning backwards, and feel your gluteus maximus, because I'm going to guarantee that it is turned on, if not gripping. And then I say, take the thighs back to relax your butt. And then when you can feel your gluteus maximus relaxed when you're standing, you're in better posture. And I am an iconoclast in certain ways, and I'm very happy to be that way. And what I teach flies in the face of what a lot of people teach. I do not understand teachers who say your gluteus maximus, your butt should be active like 30% at all times. And that's not uncommon. And it drives me kooky. Like, I don't get it, right? Because when you're standing, your gluteus maximus does not need to be doing anything. And if it is doing anything, it's shutting down gluteus medius and gluteus minimus, right? The underlying glutes. And even when we're walking on level ground, your gluteus maximus doesn't need to be doing much. It's involved in your push-off, but really, gluteus maximus is an up and down muscle, right? It's an extensor. You go uphill, you go downhill. That's when you really kick gluteus maximus into gear. It's working a tiny bit when we're walking, less so when we're standing. So my first instruction is relax your butt. I have a bunch of different cues for how to get your pelvis to neutral. Good posture means standing with a neutral pelvis. Doesn't mean you exercise always with a neutral pelvis, right? Every step when you walk, everything you do when you're walking, your pelvis tilts and then it rotates. It tilts and rotates, tilts and rotates. It goes from posterior to anterior to posterior to anterior, doing different things on each side. That's because the sacrum and the hips, they have movement, right? They nutation, counter nutation. But when standing, we want to find a neutral pelvis because we want to learn to stand in neutral and move from neutral. And then, so that's why I start with relax your butt. And then, everything I do is compare and contrast, because I can say everything, but it's meaningless what I say. You need to feel it. So when you stand in old you, if you can acknowledge that your gluteus maximus is overworking, that's great. And then you can go to new you and feel your gluteus maximus relax. That's great too. And then you get to decide if you think that's good or bad. I'm pretty sure it's good. It's what I do. It's how I make my living. But maybe in the long run, you think it's not great.
Yeah. I have my, I'd have to stand up and feel it. So
Feel free to stand
I'm,
up.
I might do that in a second. Just give me one sec.
I'm not showing my belly like that. I eat too much.
Yeah, I'll say. So yeah,
I
my butt is relaxed, but
bigger butt than
I
you,
do
though.
think that like you're talking about gluteus maximus, and you want your gluteus medius to be a little bit engaged here, don't you?
Well, to what end? And this is not a quiz, right? But you want gluteus medius and minimus
For
to
me,
be,
if I like completely relax my butt, this is me, right?
yeah, but that's not
So I can't.
relaxed.
I want to have a curve in my lower back, and that's where like lifting here, and I guess that doesn't involve my butt so much. But
So here's the thing.
it's about like deepening my groin by sending the thighs back. That part I get.
That relaxes your butt as well.
And then now my butt is pretty relaxed. And I guess in here it's pretty relaxed too. But
So
there's
go back.
some slight engagement here from like, and that's maybe just because I don't do this on a regular basis. I mean, I
Well,
do it on a
go,
regular basis, but I don't do it all the time. That having to stick my butt out a little bit is for me really, it feels unnatural.
that's totally fine. But go back to what you were saying. Yeah, when you said that relaxes your butt, but that does not relax your butt. What that
Well, I don't
does,
know. I can't have you come over here and like feel the engage. There's no engagement in my glutes.
plus you
Yeah,
don't have a lot
there's
of
some.
butt. You need more butt to
I
begin with.
don't. I do. I work on it a lot too. It's sad.
No, so
I work my glutes all day long.
when we're looking at the gluteus maximus, right? What's its opposite muscle? My favorite muscle, the psoas.
The
Oh, no,
psoas.
stand there. Stay there. That looks really good. Let me show you this. Stand, turn around the other way that you were, because that works visually. Thank you very
You see
much.
that?
So do
50
that.
years old.
Do that. That's good stuff. Let the thighs go forward into old you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
This feels
So
horrible now. By the way, I
I
can't
love
stand like this anymore. It's your fucking fault.
it's the best. So check this out, right? Your butt is overworking and your
Yeah,
psoas
over here it is. Yeah, I can feel it. It's squeezed together. It's horrible.
Here,
Here,
is
let me just move my camera for a second because
no, you look great. It's perfect.
I think it was. I'd rather have it be really level.
That's good.
I think this is better.
So two things are going. One, your butt is turned on, but your psoas is turned off. And that's a bummer. So now take your thighs back.
And my head is forward too, which is we'll come to that.
Yeah, because everyone has forward head. So what are you going to do? Take your thighs back. Nicely done. Didn't look like you did it from your calves. I don't think you're a hyperextender in general.
I'm not. My knees are, yeah, go for it.
You relaxed your butt.
Yeah, feels much better.
You aligned your psoas. So all of a sudden, your bones are holding you up and your muscles are not overworking up and down the chain. Go back to where you were. The butt turns on, the lower back. This is exactly the picture I use in my workshop, by the way. You know the one I'm talking about. You're out in a field somewhere. The butt turns on, the lower back muscles all compress, right? All the paraspinal muscles are just short.
Yeah, it feels horrible here.
Totally.
Yeah, no question.
So take your thighs back. It relaxes your butt and stacks your bones. And that's why
I could go anywhere. I could go anywhere from here.
Yeah, you look great.
Walking.
And even before you showed me the old you, your posture is so different than it used to be. Like, for real. It's really cool.
Yo, I've been working on this, starting with you, and I've, opened up.
Come back to sit. So not to be too harsh.
Can I sit now?
Yeah, come back to sit.
See, I have a curve in my lower back now.
You do. I would say that your mid-thoracic is a little flat, probably.
So flat. No, and I work on that. This is my new project. Is my mid-thoracic that I want to. Yeah, I don't want to encourage people to go hyperkyphotic, but I do need a little more kyphosis in my back.
No, so I love that you some of your phrasing drives me crazy because you don't want to encourage people to have more kyphosis. You want them to have a broadening of the lower thoracic, not the upper thoracic, right? You want them. So a lot of people, what happens is their lumbar is too curved, and that means the thoracic doesn't start its curve soon enough. And we need the lower thoracic, T12, to be moving backwards sooner than almost everybody's is. And that's the main. So I can say everything is the main thing because I can say relax your butt is the main thing. But this idea for me of broaden the middle back, open up the middle back is as important as relaxing your butt. And that's where everyone collapses. When I say there are four most important joints when we're talking about the body and posture, right? T12L1, where the thoracic meets the lumbar, L5S1, where the lumbar meets the sacrum, and then the iliofemoral ligaments, where the legs meet the hips. Right? What are the most popular surgeries we have out there? Hip replacement, L4, L5 fusion. That is because of bad posture. Right? Externally rotated femur heads, and we're leaning backwards and crunching L4, L5. We're also tormenting T12L1 because we collapse that middle back. But what's interesting is you don't see a lot of that people are not getting that section surgically repaired, which is interesting because we suffer most in the lower lumbar. But
that's you. I mean, I would think if you're talking about T12L1 getting surgically repaired,
they don't get surgically repaired.
Yeah, but if you fuse, I don't think if you fuse those, it seems like you would like horribly limit your rotation and your spinal flexion.
Absolutely correct.
That's what I would think. That's why I would think it's not actually a feasible surgery yet. It might come to be.
No, you're absolutely correct. It's something that people need to understand about. Like a lot of people don't think about because that's so dead on the money. The lumbar vertebra do not twist. So what people I think a lot of people don't realize, and I have to say a lot of yoga teachers don't realize, the lumbar vertebrae do not twist. They are not designed for twist. They have 1 degree of twist when the lumbar is flexing. Like there's so little movement in terms of rotation in the lumbar. Right? They're big fat bones that are made to bear and transfer weight.
Yeah.
That's why we're able to stand upright. It's why we're able to walk. But the crazy thing is that thoracic has a ton of twist.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so you're exactly right. But what I think is amazing is that I think so many people's problems are a T12L1 because that transition from no twist to twist really needs to be well aligned, right? And when you're standing in old you and your thighs are forward and you're leaning backwards, you are collapsing a T12L1, sinking into that joint, and there's no movement for the spine. The spine gets locked in place. And then, does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I'm with you so far.
Yeah, that's great. So you got to relax your butt. I have a few different cues for what's the proper position of the pelvis to get people to neutral. You know, one of my favorites is give your butt a room of its own. Because when people stand up, they tend to let their buttocks just sit down on the hamstring and thigh. That's the old you. And it's a bubble, right? Big gluteus maximus. It's a bubble that has its own space, but we tend to just let it flatten. So give your butt a room of its own, and then
that's a good, like, give your butt a room of its own on its own has never spoken to me, I have to tell you. But now that you've explained it, that like, and I can visualize exactly what I did when we're doing the little segment where I was standing up.
Right.
That's giving your butt a room of its own, right? It's kind of lifting it up off of the hamstrings and letting it like stick your butt up, basically, right? Like
that's it. Look, you know, from my perspective, I have probably 30 different postural cues, and you only need one. And if one doesn't work for you, I'll give you another. And if 10 don't work for you, I'll keep going till one of them resonates. just because I like the sound of give your butt a room of its own, that doesn't really mean that it's the best one. But do you want to stand up and we can show this? I'll show you what I think is the clearest, best, the best instruction there is. You ready? Stand in all of you. Tell me about it. Doesn't even matter. It can even be.
It hurts.
Tell me about your breath here.
I can't get it all the way down here, and I certainly, well, I can expand in here, but I can't get it all the way down.
Yeah, it's all thoracic, and what's interesting, yours is not as much upper chest as a lot of people. Like, if I was to put a bunch of people in your position you're in now, most people are just rising up in the rib cage, and you're not really, right?
That's because I'm a yoga teacher. I've learned to breathe. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, I could think like here, I could just get stuck here, right? If I'm just not even thinking about it. When I think about it a little bit, I'm trying to make it more of a belly breath regardless. Now I just try for everything to be a belly breath, just like I always try to stand correctly, right? That's your fault.
Right. I would not overdo belly breath as an image, especially in teaching, because I think we get a little caught up in that. But watch.
I usually
stand in the bad U.
Yeah.
And like you said, you're breathing into the mid-thoracic, right?
Yeah.
And you're not dropping the breath. And I don't think it's belly breath. I think it's it's the whole trunk. So take your legs back. And now.
Yeah, then I can expand through here as well.
But I want you to add to it. I want you to slump. I want you to let the front ribs drop and the arm bones roll forward a little more. Open up T12L1. Expand T12L1. More, all in fun. Start to round over. Yeah, I don't care. No, a little less.
Doesn't feel good.
Right?
This is all right. This is okay.
The way you fixed that was by lifting the front of the rib cage. I want you to stay where you are, but drop the front of the rib cage and broaden T12L1, which I know is hard for you. That's the flat thoracic. But now tell me about your breath. And you should be relaxed. Don't be holding anything. But what happens when you go to this new you posture? What happens to the breath?
This is how, like, all those, I have like a methadone clinic down the street, and there's all these like reformed heroin addicts who come and stand outside my window, and they have this, they stand like this.
Yeah, but look,
that's what it's remind me of.
We used to call them Methadonians, and the fact
Methadonians, that they can literally sleep like this, like it's like they defying gravity. That's what I feel like. That I could actually fall asleep like this, like right here.
They actually have amazing They have amazing balance and will never fall over. If you notice,
it's incredible.
It's incredible. Okay, so watch. Legs back a little more. Give your butt a room of its own. Drop your front ribs a little. Let your arms hang. Let your arm bones roll forward. What happens to your breath? Don't fix anything. Don't worry about your head. But what happens to your breath?
This one is horrible. Like, I can't. It stops.
That's right. It stops.
Like the inhale stops. Whereas here I can inhale.
And you're using more of your trunk. Do you feel that? It's not just belly breath. It's
I know. It's always that's the whole cylinder, right? It's like that's my image that I give people is a cylinder that needs to expand. It's like you expand the silo.
So now go to even the tiniest bit of old you. Don't go all the way to bad you. Go to midway.
I don't want to do
breathing. Right? The minute you go even a tiny bit backwards, you shut off access to the diaphragm and the breath goes up.
So that's interesting, because that's actually why when I correct my posture, it's like I can feel myself that I can't breathe as well anymore. And so then I'm like, oh shit, you must be closing off, that T12L1 connection or whatever. You're just ending up with this diaphragmatic. It's not diaphragm. It stops at the diaphragm. Actually, it's not diaphragmatic breathing. Like the diaphragm doesn't feel like it's descending.
This diaphragm gets stuck. Basically, I say it on T12L1. So I think that's the clearest instruction, but not for everybody. Some people Some people, it's relax your butt. Some people, it's give your butt a room of its own, right? It doesn't matter. And they're all the same. So it doesn't matter to me which one resonates for anyone. But one of these needs to resonate for you to change. But I think, so here's the thing about breathing. It's one of my favorite things. I say the same things over and over again, right?
Mm-hmm.
We breathe anywhere from 20 to 23,000 times a day, every single day. If you were to improve your breath 5%, 7%, even that tiny little amount over the course of a day, week, month, years, that's life-changing. So by improving your posture even a little bit, you improve your breath and everything changes.
That's true.
Energy throughout your day, energy when you wake up, everything changes. The thing is that I work with people who have pain issues, who have been to repeated bouts of physical therapy, and their physical therapists are all like, there is no validity to postural changes for pain relief. And even if I would agree with that, right? Even if I would agree with that, and I really don't, because my whole life
you do not.
Yeah, my everything I do is based on it. The value of postural changes is about aging well. Because when you change your posture, you're less likely to suffer from bone degeneration. You're going to breathe better for the rest of your life. You're going to be more effective in everything you do, especially in how you walk and et cetera, et cetera. But so that breathing thing makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I think breath is primordial. And it's like now I'm a personal trainer at a gym called, Crunch. So if you want to come train at Crunch for the Green with me, please hit me up. I'm happy to take you on.
Us for that
shameless
spot?
What's that?
I said, are they paying us for that endorsement?
That would be great. We can work on that. Anyway, that's my shameless plug for myself. People come to the gym for different reasons. A lot of them, they want to work out, they want to lift heavy, whatever. I'm happy to tell you to lift heavy. But what I notice a lot is when people start lifting heavy, they stop breathing. And that's crazy to me. And there is certainly the Vasava technique, I think it's called, where you hold your breath as you're pushing up, so that you can keep tension in your abdominal cavity. But then you have to breathe at the end. Do you know what I'm saying? Like you have to exhale and then inhale again. But I find that people are like, hold their breath, don't breathe properly, stop their breath short, or are breathing kind of not in rhythm with the exercise, if that makes sense. They just breathe whenever. So rather than like exhaling as you push or inhaling as you push, because some people like that better, which it doesn't make sense to me, but some people like it better. So sometimes that's what I do. But as you exhale as you push and you inhale as you bring everything back in the eccentric phase, they'll just be breathing kind of haphazardly whenever they feel like it. And it's just not as efficient. But all that to say is that breath is so important, like you said, and it's important in posture. It's important when you exercise. It's important when you're running. Like when you're running, like part of the whole thing about learning to run is how and when do you breathe? What's the rhythm? And I think that people who are good runners have like a breathing rhythm that they maintain. So yes, it does make sense. And if nothing else, because aging gracefully is important, but it's not on the forefront of everybody's mind, breathing well really makes you feel better, like immediately. So if nothing else, good posture can bring immediate relief in that area.
No question.
And also oxygen like makes your brain and your muscles work better.
Everything. That's why we exercise, right? We exercise to oxygenate the blood in the brain.
Yeah.
And the thing about breathing technique for lifting and stuff, technique is essential. It's just that I think a lot of people don't even understand why they're doing the technique they're doing. Very often they're just being told, use this technique. But I think it's really key to understand why you're doing what you're doing. And that's part of the whole process, right? It's like, I'm telling you, stand up straight, but I also want to tell you why it's good, what is the value of it, and that when you're training people, if they're just saying, well, someone told me to breathe this way, You need to have, from my perspective, they should have an answer as to why it's good and why it's bad, or why they should do it as opposed to another technique. But yeah, breath is life. You know,
Yeah.
there are very few things that we can do anything. We can lose our limbs. We can survive through a lot of things, but you cannot survive without breathing.
Yeah, you can survive without food for a number of weeks, right? You can survive without water for a number of days. You can survive without breath for perhaps a number of minutes, but not longer than that. And that's when you've trained yourself, right? That's like the David Blaine's of the world and stuff.
Totally. So, you know, the thing about, like, when I say I'm often in bad posture, I don't ever think my bad posture is always through my pelvis and my legs, but I feel like I have really trained my diaphragm and rib cage well, and that I'm very rarely, like, we've been sitting here a long time. If this is on video, you know, the proof is in the pudding. You can either say I'm sitting up like this, you know, and or I tend to do really good work in my chest in order for breathing, even when I'm doing all the other stuff wrong. I wasn't going to point out your sitting posture in the beginning of the.
No, it was horrible. I knew it. But now I just fixed it because
Yeah.
you mentioned that we're on video. I forgot that we're on video.
So here's the
Just
thing.
starting a video podcast.
Here's the thing about sitting,
Yeah.
right?
Now I fixed it. I have a curve in my lower back and stuff. Like,
I have a bad curve. Sitting is so bad for us. This is my favorite phrase about sitting. Sitting is so bad that sitting well is worse for you than standing poorly. Right?
That's why people get standing desks.
Yeah, sitting is, and but standing desks are hard too, because you stand in new you for hours. It's not going to serve you well. You got to learn to stand to use your standing desk. But let's move up, right? So we're moving up the chain, and let's talk about arms, because we started with the worst instruction is take your shoulders back, right? And it's what we do our whole life. It's what my mother said to me every day of my life. Stand up straight, take your shoulders back. And my mother was really hip. She did yoga when we were really young at the HES with Miss Lorraine. And I did yoga when I was 6 years old, which is why I think I loved it when I got back to it at 32. You know, I had a sort of resonance with my childhood, which I'm really interested in. And also hypermobility makes you really good at yoga. So it's helpful,
sure does.
Right? But
it makes you really good in a bad way.
Bad Tadasana makes you really bad. And I blew out my knees because of yoga, like using my hyperextension too much and all of that stuff. But you want to stand up again?
Why am I the one standing up? You should be standing up.
I'm not taking my shirt off. That's for one. Stand, and even here, right? This is not terrible posture, but it's sort of old you a little bit.
It's just because my neck won't go back.
We're going to get to the head, but I've decided against changing people's heads in a lot of ways. It's too hard.
It's impossible.
Tell me about your arms. Are they free or are they stuck in space?
I feel like they're free.
Now take your thighs back a little bit. Drop your front ribs.
I know you want me to let them hang down like this and roll forward.
I mean, visually, I'm able to see it. Do you feel the way they're hanging?
Yeah.
That's it.
But don't.
That's it. That's good posture. Now, no.
It should be like this.
No. Go back to where you were.
That's athletic posture.
Well, that's where we're heading, right? So that's it. And now lift your chin. Don't even pull your head back. Just lift your chin. Less. Too much stress in your throat. Now drop your head again. Just lift the chin a fraction. Just the chin. Chin up. There you go. You know, you have a neck like
that's mine. That's what I was before.
Yeah. So now drop your front ribs. Drop your front ribs. Round over. There you go. Nope, you even went too far. There's the moment where your arms release. You feel that, right?
Yeah, they're released now.
Yeah, so and your breath is
But you
better.
keep telling me to drop my ribs, but my ribs are pretty tight knit.
But when your arms are released, your breath is better and your butt is relaxed. Does that resonate?
Yeah. My
So now
hamstrings are
I know that
getting pulled really tight, really apart though.
I'm not worried about that.
No,
I
I
know
know you're not.
that you are a tennis player,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Show me setting up to receive a serve. You're pretty close. That's it. That's good posture. That's old you. I mean, that's new you. Go to old you. And you're not playing tennis.
With my tennis racket.
That's it. You cannot play tennis with the posture you go through life with. Show me a golf swing.
Oh, I don't know. I don't play golf.
But no, you're doing it.
But yeah,
right?
so it's just butt is stuck out. You wait for a basketball. You're playing defense. You're here.
Exactly.
Football player. You're here, right?
Exactly.
Badminton.
So
you're waiting for your volleyball.
Yeah. Do you watch baseball? Are you a baseball fan?
Baseball.
So here's one of my favorite images, right?
You're waiting to catch the ball like this.
Show me a baseball player hitting, just like you did sideways. All right, so it's before the game and you're in the batting cage. This is what you do when you want to hit well, right? That's new you. Now show me the baseball player after when they leave the batting cage and watch the next guy. That's exactly it. That's why
moving the hips too.
Or arms folded across the chest also works. Right?
That's a GM. The GM is like this, right?
So and I love that distinction because a lot of athletes do their sport. Come back to sit. A lot of athletes do their sport perfectly, but they don't do anything about their posture when they're not playing.
That's correct.
And I think that's why a lot of the athletes, it's not that they're not hurting their back from playing, but a lot of times athletes don't heal as well because they're not paying attention to the way they stand and walk. And if you pay attention to those things along with your rehab for your knee, you're going to heal faster and better and longer, Golf, which I don't golf, though I hope to in my retirement, in my old age. The first instruction any golf teacher worth their salt gives is you have to let your arms hang.
Yep.
That's it. That's it.
It's all about being loose, right? That's the whole thing.
That's the same thing for posture. So why have I given up on the head? It's just too hard. And most people,
these muscles are really hard to fix.
And I think most people, when they try to fix their head, they go back to old you.
I think that's probably true because they don't know how to do this.
That's exact. And
you say, take your chin back. They do this. That's how people take their chin back, right? So instead of like that, which I'm lengthening my cervical spine, I do this because I see this with I teach a couple of Zoom classes myself, and I'll be like, take your chin back, and people go like this.
That's right.
And what I want is tilt it down and push up, right? Lift up.
Yeah, but I want you to not.
It's really hard.
Actually, I don't want you to close off your throat as much. Here's
Why
one
not?
way
it makes my voice deeper.
Eye sockets level is a great image. Not eyes, right? But eye sockets. Eye sockets parallel or level. That's a really great way to look at it. There's another thing. Yeah.
I think that everybody's head is so far forward that's why I have them push it back, way back, when I'm teaching them, because for those 30 seconds at least, they're able to let the cervical spine kind of soften or relax.
No question.
Separate.
There are a couple of things, which is I'm hypermobile. So I can actually stand up in my good you posture, my new you, and I can fix my head really easily, right? I cannot ask someone who's super tight and genuinely kyphotic to fix their head because they're just too tight. And the head does not really interested in going there, especially when they're first learning this stuff. So I have taken to, let people's heads do what people's heads will do for a while before I try to get them to fix that. except, when the head tilts down too much, it's kind of depressing. So you don't want to do that. But fixing the head and the neck is really, really difficult.
Yeah, it's a challenge. And I had I had my client this morning who's hypermobile. She put the block in underneath her shoulder blades and her head went straight down to the floor, no problem, right? I had a client yesterday do that. I'm gonna call him hyperkyphotic because he is, right? He's rounded, he's got a hump a little bit. His head was not even level with his shoulders, like it was up.
Yeah.
And I had to put a yoga block on the highest level to hold up his head. Because otherwise it wasn't even hanging. Do you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, yo, you have to do this every day. Like this, it's not a joke. Like it's gonna be bad for you ultimately, And it's not like he's got cactus on the back, like whatever, it's all that stuff to release those back muscles.
But it's also, don't forget.
But yeah, it's a lot of people aren't able to put their heads on the floor when they have a yoga block underneath their shoulder blades, which is, I thought I was stiff back there, but that's crazy.
If that's the case, how are they going to fix their head when they're working on their posture, right? That person just really can't. Don't forget, a lot of the back stuff is pec minor. And a lot of people are so tight in pec minor, that's why the back.
They're doing construction at the end of my block. I see those cats every day, and they're standing back. They're leaning so far back. Like, I'm like, you gotta have back problems,
It's so wild.
And I wonder how they get through the day, because they're also they've presumably have back problems, but they're also lifting heavy stuff. Like, they've, and I assume painkillers or whatever, but
no, not necessarily.
It's not going to end well, That's
not
for sure.
Necessarily. What the thing about all this stuff is a lot of people get through life with bad posture and all that stuff and don't break down. That I don't think they're going to age as well as they might. But almost everyone I work with has hypermobility issues. When we are tight, we don't break down in the same way. We're going to break down. We're not going to age well when we're crazy tight. Right. But all of those construction workers are not going to necessarily suffer for it. You don't have to come to me to change your posture if you're not in pain. I really believe that. It would serve you, right? But it doesn't mean you're going to fall apart. It's that once you start getting injured, once the cascade of injuries happen and don't stop, then you really need to change your posture and your walking patterns to get back on track. And that's a really interesting distinction for me. But I'll tell you this story about not looking so bad. I don't even remember how I used to walk. So I've been having my wife film me walking well and walking the way I walk now, and trying to show bad walking. And the other day, it was about a month ago, she was filming me and she said, when you're walking badly, you look just like your brother. And I said, that is so great because I don't remember how I used to walk. I do an imitation of my brother when I want to walk badly. And he walks it's just feet turned out and leading from the hips. And, my poor brother has had
double knee replacement, right?
Both of his knees replaced. He's had a lumbar surgery. I think he's going to have a cervical if he hasn't already. Everyone in my family is hypermobile. My father never did a day's exercise in his life other than putting a cigarette to his lips, which he did really well, and he did it for a long time. He got away with it till he was 75. And then he fell and broke his ankle, and it was downhill from there. He basically never recovered from that first fall. And my mother ended up with the last 5 years of her life in bed. But a lot of that was surgery. She had a surgery gone bad. But my
I remember you talking about it. You talked about that in a previous podcast.
Yeah, exactly. My parents were hypermobile. Me, my brother, and my sister are hypermobile. If I didn't blow out my knees in my 30s and have 3 surgeries, I would be where my brother and sister are. And I don't think they're doing well. My sister's had a couple of bad accidents that's led to a lot of stuff, but born with severe scoliosis, right? It's all about how we're going to age, but not everybody is going to suffer for their bad posture. And there's very little incentive to change your posture if you're not in pain, right? We're not
Right.
designed to think about the way we stand. We're not designed to think about the way we breathe. We're not designed to think about the way we walk. They're all autonomic functions. They're just supposed to happen without our thinking about them. So to actually override the system and think about these things, that takes a lot of weird, different kind of work that everyone should do. But pain is the great incentive.
There's a lot more to be said about posture. And I think we'll probably come back to it. It's not like we haven't talked about it before, right? We've just never dedicated like a full episode to it. I'm excited to, come and revisit it. I'll finish by saying that if you've enjoyed this podcast or video cast, please give us a like on whatever platform you're using and give us a comment as well. Recommend this podcast to other people if you've gleaned something from it. We want to keep doing these for as long as we are able to, right? And if we continue with good posture, hopefully that's another 20, 30 years. And we really do love bringing these to you. So the way to keep that going, this is a labor of love, but if you can spread the word, we'd be really grateful. In the meantime, Jonathan, it's been great reconnecting with you because it had been a while since we'd even spoken. It's great to see you. Look great. Love the new haircut. And I will. Sorry, I love the hair. And we'll get back together really soon, and talk about posture again, and do a couple of more exercises with relative to posture. So, and maybe I won't be the guinea pig this time. Maybe you will.
Maybe. All right. Nice to see you, Alex. Have a great day.
Great to see you too.
Thanks for watching, everyone.
Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye-bye.